This EOFY, get deals that don't blend in. Like 1.9% finance across select variants when you finance with Nissan. All backed by Australia's only 10-year, 300,000-kilometre warranty. Get into your local Nissan dealer today.
Hello from the Amplify newsroom, I'm Hayden Versara. Construction is now finished on a new, fully electric-powered emergency services station in Acton in central Canberra. The $40 million facility will house both ACT Fire and Rescue and ACT Ambulance service crews, with the station set to become operational in the coming months. It features solar panels, capacity for up to 6 ambulance vehicles, and charging infrastructure for electric emergency vehicles. China has weighed in on what Australia should be doing with our defence spending. At a time when the US is pushing Canberra to increase it by 5% of GDP, Beijing reckons we shouldn't worry. Finance Minister Katie Gallagher telling Nine Labor isn't listening to outside commentary.
There seems to be a lot of countries' interest in our budget. Look, our position remains the same. We make decisions based in our national interest, based on our needs, and we'll continue to do so, whether it be in defence, national security or a whole range of other areas.
The Prime Minister has called violence against women a scourge when asked about Australia's upcoming social media ban. Anthony Albanese says there is widespread support for the world first ban, which would bar teens 16 and under from December. The Prime Minister says harmful content is being viewed by Aussie children.
Young men and boys being exposed to graphic material which does not promote healthy relationships can often promote a violent perception and a misogynistic attitude towards women.
Cars and motorbikes will no longer fly under the radar at average speed camera zones in regional New South Wales, with fines kicking in from tomorrow. The cameras have been placed since 2011, but until now only tracked trucks on key highways like the Hume. Minister for Roads in New South Wales, Jenny Aitchison, says expanding enforcement is crucial for tackling the road toll.
Just this year, in terms of the number of speeding offences that have resulted in fatalities, we would have 59 people who survived crashes.
A 4-day public hearing kicks off in Canberra today, looking at issues with strata property management. CEO of the local Real Estate Institute, Maria Edwards, says they're calling for a strata commissioner to be appointed and mandatory education.
A lot of people live in strata in the ACT, and having well-educated strata managers will make a big difference to the experience that they have.
And Green Machine veteran Josh Papali'i is back in Maroon, named for Queensland's Origin 3 clash in Sydney. The 31-year-old returns after retiring from rep duties in 2023, answering a call from coach Billy Slater. We'll be paying a reduced health levy after the ACT Greens negotiations with the local government. The $250 levy, announced in last week's budget, has now been dropped to $100 for residential ratepayers in the capital. But big businesses will see their payroll tax go up to 8.75% to offset it. Greens leader Shane Rattenbury says it's a win for everyday Canberrans, but there's still more to do. Meanwhile, the Commonwealth's health funding boost for Canberra is kicking in from today, with $50 million rolling out to upgrade our hospitals as part of a previously announced commitment. Also underway is $10.5 million to deliver 3 fully bulk billed GP clinics across the city, as well as a boost for those in Tuggeranong.
Clearly a really valued service, the Interchange Health Co-op in Tuggeranong. We saw that when it closed, a lot of patients were displaced, and so we've announced that $3.8 million, which will flow this financial year to make sure that that stays open and provides a bulk billed service to its patients.
The Canberra Liberals are not impressed the ACT Chief Minister is heading off overseas less than a week after a tough budget was handed down for Canberrans. Andrew Barr is leading a delegation to Japan for the Australian Pavilion Expo. Opposition leader Leanne Castley says it's not a good look as locals faced cost of living pressures.
To find that the Chief Minister is spending thousands of taxpayer dollars going off on a trade mission right at the time he's taxing them for things based off their spending spree, I think is just a slap in the face to Canberrans.
Claims out of the US today, Donald Trump isn't a fan of Kevin Rudd. The senior poly over in the States saying comments made by Rudd have rubbed the president the wrong way. Calls now for Anthony Albanese to sack the Australian ambassador and bring in an Aussie the president likes.
Well, JD Vance had some pretty strong comments, it's got to be said, and he's now the Vice President of the United States of America.
The ACT Property Council is calling on the local government to have a heightened focus on building productivity. The push comes from 1 year celebrations today of Australia's national 1.2 million new home targets. But Ashley Berry from the council says we can't afford to lose momentum.
We're backing the ACT government's housing reforms, but things like rising rates, higher levies and no relief to the lease variation charge in last week's budget simply sends the wrong signal to investors.
And the ACCC is taking makers of Banana Boat and Hawaiian Tropic to court. The consumer watchdog accusing the brand's parent company, Edgewell Personal Care, of greenwashing when it made claims its sunscreen products were reef-friendly. The ACCC says the products contain ingredients that can harm coral and marine life. Evo energy crews have been busy trying to restore power after dozens of Canberra homes were impacted by last night's wild weather. Chisholm and Rivette are two of the main suburbs affected, while local SES crews have responded to nearly 30 calls for help, mainly for wind-related damage and fallen trees. There's also a severe weather warning in place for damaging winds for parts of the Snowy Mountains and southern ACT. The ACT Greens say it's a momentous week for young people after the minimum age of criminal responsibility increased to 14 this week. It means kids under 14 who commit a crime will now get other support instead of going to jail, with exceptions for more serious crimes. The Greens insist they'll keep an eye on government funding for support services over the coming days to make sure young people get the help they need to get their lives back on track. There's been several recent cases of Canberra drivers failing to give way to emergency vehicles, prompting fresh calls for drivers to be more on the ball. Detective Sergeant Sean Evans says there's some hefty penalties.
If you fail to give way to an emergency vehicle, you could incur a 3-point demerit offence with $384 fine attached to it.
And those who don't slow down to 40 when passing stationary emergency vehicles risk a $308 fine and 2 demerit points. The Prime Minister might not have had a face-to-face discussion with Donald Trump yet, but Foreign Minister Penny Wong has told Nine there have been plenty of high-level talks behind the scenes.
We will have a meeting. It's unfortunate that the meeting at the G7 had to be cancelled. Again, I appreciated the fact that Secretary Rubio expressed the regret for that, but these things do happen.
Calls today for a national inquiry into childcare. It comes as state leaders look to make the industry safer following the Victorian abuse allegations. The Children's Commissioner, Anne Hollands, telling Seven we need to close the gaps.
There are holes in the child safety scaffolding, not just in Victoria, but around Australia.
As of this week, Australian cigarettes are set to look, feel and taste different as the federal government passes new laws to make them less attractive and reduce preventable death. The move has been welcomed by the ACT's Alcohol, Tobacco and Other Drug Association, saying it's a step in the right direction.
We welcome the laws as a really positive step towards improved public health. So we recognise that the laws that came into effect are part of a much broader reform package that the federal government's been rolling out for the last few years, and we think this is a really positive step.
ATODA CEO Anita Mills there. And we finally know the name of the new baby zebra at the National Zoo and Aquarium. It's Tuli, a Swahili word meaning peaceful and calm. Tuli is the zoo's 28th zebra to be born there. New census data reveals a steady move away from ACT government schools as more parents choose non-government options. Demographers are calling it a major social shift linked to concerns about student outcomes despite high public funding. Falling enrolments are prompting the government to cut back on planned school expansions. The local property council is calling for a full review of our commercial rate system. It's as their latest survey shows confidence in the ACT government's ability to manage growth in the property and construction industry has dropped to the lowest level of any jurisdiction. The council's executive director, Ashley Berry, says it's not surprising.
The industry is concerned about the pipeline and concerned about rising rates, higher levies and no relief in last week's budget.
Sean Diddy Combs' attorney has praised the music mogul following his acquittal on serious racketeering and sex trafficking offences in New York. The 55-year-old, though, remains behind bars as he awaits sentencing on 2 prostitution charges which still carry 10-year jail terms. But outside court, Mark Agnifilo has labelled it a great victory for his client and the jury system.
The kidnapping, he was innocent of that. The arson, he was innocent of that. The obstructing justice, he was innocent of that. And that is no longer just me saying that. That is the verdict of our jury.
Investigations continue into a massive hack on Qantas, where the data of millions of customers has potentially been compromised. Cybercriminals targeting a call centre in Manila on Monday, with details including names, emails, birth dates, phone numbers and frequent flyer numbers accessed, but not personal financial details. On the ABC, National Cybersecurity Coordinator, Lieutenant General Michelle McGuinness, telling affected customers what to look out for.
You don't take unsolicited emails, texts or calls. You don't respond. If you think someone is reaching out to you from an official capacity, hang up or don't respond. Go and source your own number or email to reach out to that person.
The US has assured our Foreign Minister that Donald Trump does want to meet with Anthony Albanese. Their last scheduled meeting got canned because of the Middle East crisis. Penny Wong has had talks with Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Washington and has told Sky they are confident it will happen soon.
The President is a very, very busy man, but I was pleased that Secretary Rubio made clear that, obviously that they're keen for a meeting, they want to reschedule it. It was disappointing, as he said, that they had to reschedule because the President had to return.
Construction is now kicking off on the long-awaited Brickworks redevelopment, marking a major shift for Yarralumla's landscape. The project will preserve key heritage features while delivering new homes, green space and a commercial village centre. It's the first real activity on the site since the kilns shut down nearly 50 years ago. And celebrating 30 years of the Torres Strait Islander flag being recognised as one of Australia's national flags, the Mint has released a brand new $2 coin. Highlighting the strength and unity of the Torres Strait Islander community, the coin embodies the same iconic green and blue colours shown on the national flag.
The ACT Treasurer hasn't ruled out keeping the Territory's new health levy in place beyond its initial 4-year timeline, citing a growing health funding gap. The levy was originally $250, but a deal with the Greens reduced it to $100. But Chris Steele says more funding may still be needed.
We will review that in the context of the negotiation that we have. If the Commonwealth makes a greater contribution, that would be taken into account. But we do need to make sure that we can fund the critical services that Canberrans rely on.
A major step forward in plans to make housing a human right. A tripartisan committee's recommended the Assembly support the Greens legislation, which would make housing a fundamental human right in the Human Rights Act. Leader Shane Rattenbury says the change can't come soon enough, especially for those disproportionately impacted by the housing crisis. ANU's leadership is in the spotlight again. The uni will provide one of its regulators with information about its governance as part of a compliance assessment. It follows recent criticism around the uni's leadership following several rounds of job cuts. Education Minister Jason Clare has announced new laws for on-the-spot compliance checks at childcare centres following the Victorian abuse allegations. Clare telling Sky the legislation will be introduced when Parliament resumes on July 22.
This work will never end. There are always going to be more things that we need to do here because there's always going to be people who are going to try and break through the net to try to do the dastardly things.
The government also promising to cut funding to centres that fail to meet safety standards. A court's dished out a $400,000 fine for asbestos violations at a renovation site in Chapman back in 2022. WorkSafe says a former Canberra business, Dream House, failed to comply with health and safety duties during the renovation works, putting workers and the public at risk. A reminder for anyone thinking about stealing a public defibrillator, they are tracked and you will be caught. It's after one was taken from Dixon Shops recently. Thankfully, it has been found. We're told removing or tampering with one puts lives at risk, and anyone who sees suspicious behaviour around a public defibrillator should report it to police or St John Ambulance. Big crowds are expected in Bruce for the Raiders and Canberra Brave games tomorrow, with locals encouraged to take public transport. And a bizarre announcement from Donald Trump today, with the US president revealing there would be a UFC fight at the White House next year as part of America's 250th birthday. And that's the latest from the Canberra newsroom this Friday. Check back again on Monday morning for our next update.
This is Will, and Will always likes more. That's why Will uses car sales to buy a car. We have over 200,000 new, used and demo cars to choose from, all there on the app.
Perfect.
Car sales in Melbourne Storm. More, better.